it's mostly the paranormal that is in there. You know, some amps like the rectifier and the Marshall, I think have to use a pedal in front of it. But I used the Mesa pedal, the Flux 5, that I got from solely from Ectomorph again. He used it with his Mark V Mesa amp, and it was the craziest sound ever. It's also difficult because it's almost like a complete amp in itself, and run a full distorted amp into another distortion amp is creates also some not so nice things. I think they have Flux in the name if those are the ones. Yes, and they are also in the presets. They might not be turned on because I want the profile to work by itself. And then you can also always add other stuff and start fiddling with it. But my goal was to capture a sound that I think is amazing and then put that in there. What you do afterwards is your thing. Okay. I don't want people to just go to their Tube Screamer and turn that on in front of everything. That's why I already put it in my profile. On the profiles, everything is the Golden Age pre-73 and a 57 on the cabinets that I'm using. But I kept some of the details hidden because I don't want people... I know what I'm like myself. If I see something reads Marshall, I know what Marshall sounds like, and that might make me not want to listen anymore. And I didn't want to put stuff like that into the minds of people, so sometimes I called it something, you know, that didn't give away what you're actually listening to. It has to do with the cameraman here today, because he was working in the local guitar shop and called me up one day and say, I have this thing, you have to try it. And he always hated everything digital amp related kind of things. And then he brought this over and we had a lot of fun. But for me to actually use it in my work, it really has to be incredibly amazing, because we're doing albums that hopefully last a lifetime. And so I was a skeptic for a really long time, and I have to say that in working on getting this pack ready, I've been really surprised at how ridiculously close I can get to the real thing. Tuning in a sound on the Kemper and tuning in the sound on an amp is not the same thing, but the Kemper can really help me, and sometimes actually end up being the amp that we use on the album. It's a really easy way to try and sort out which amp or which cabinet do we actually want to use, because in one click you have all the amps I have at your fingertips, and then you can go through and see, okay, I always like it when it's the Mesa cab, or I always like it when it's this amp or something, and then it's a good way to find out which direction we're going in. Then sometimes, like on the last Ectomorph album, we no matter what we did with amps, we couldn't get the sound that Soli had on his Kemper profile that he's gotten used to from playing at home and doing demos and everything. So we ended up using that. If we use amps, I get a profile of it, because you never know if you have to redo something later when all the mics were moved and stuff, and like this, you're sort of safe that you can do stuff later on. And also sometimes the people in the band would like to bring those profiles with them on the road. But also sometimes I've been dialing through the Kemper to try and find sounds, and we end up finding a sound that is just right for this, and then that's what we record with. I would not like to put out 3 albums that sounded the same.
Okay.
Even if it is the best guitar sound in the whole world, I would much prefer seeing us doing something different and try to better ourselves. Because it's not even always about getting the best sound, it's about getting the right sound. The right sound for this particular guitar player, this particular record. All the amp sounds that I got, I made sure to do a profile with each of 5 or 6 different cabinets. And then later on was a lot of choosing which ones were better and which ones didn't work. And there was some of them that me and my assistant, Christian, that we never really liked while doing the profiles. But after we did them, when I put them into a reamp situation and wanted to see how does this work in a mix, then those were sometimes the ones that work best in a mix. So then it's like, well, what sounds better solo is not always what sounds best inside a full mix. There's been a lot of eye-openers like that. I've had the Laboga Mr. Hector amp for I don't know, I think 20 years or something. And it's not the amp that I have used the most. But after doing these profiles, I'm crazy about the amp. Because now I finally, instead of just plugging in and saying, this is not what we want this. And then you move on. But now I spent more time with all the amps to make sure that I find the best sound I can find for this amp today, and then I send it out to some friends of mine to try them out. And what I see also in some of the reviews that have been online, that a lot of people actually tend to pick out those sounds for their playthroughs. As a general rule, I don't have any rules. So and my goal when I have a band in the studio is not getting my sound. It's getting the sound that puts a smile on the guitar player's face. Because when he's smiling because everything sounds good, he's going to play better. And playing better makes better records. And I can work with a Marshall or a rectifier or a 5150 or whatever you show up with, or a metal zone plugged into a twin reverb. I don't care. I can make anything work as long as everybody are happy with the sound that we're building. No. You'll think about doing a different sound on one side than on the other, but it can be about changing the guitar. If it's 2 guitar players, have them play on their personal guitars, they will sound different, and that will help to widen the scope or something. And or changing the value of the gain value, or change the EQ a little bit, or even change the amp, change the cabinet, move the mic, do a different setup. But all those things you can do within the Kemper already. It's not something I consider because I think the sound should always be amazing, no matter if there's 1, 2, or 4, or 8 rhythm guitars. Don't copy-paste everything. If you're recording at home, you don't have the experience to hear when it's actually good enough. And what you just played is not good enough. You have to listen to it loop over and over again, and then that tiny little bit of squeaky sound at the end of the riff you just played perfectly. But when it's repeating 70 times through a song, it's not perfect anymore. It's annoying, and it makes it sound like techno or something, and I hate it. So don't copy paste. Computer perfect is not perfect in my book. Computer perfect is lack of personality and human beings. And music is about human beings communicating emotions to other human beings. And that is really the signal chain here. Anything where you put computers in the middle to try and fake it is going to take away from those emotions in my book. If you asked me 5 years ago, then yes, I would have an answer for you. But see, the big surprise for me when I started picking it up again about a year ago or something, is that the issues I had 5 years ago have sort of disappeared. And because that had to do with, when you use it in a metal production, and the guitar sound is pretty much 80% of the whole sound is made up by guitar sound. And I was lacking the third dimension, the human factor. But that has worked its way into it now. So when I reamp 2 tracks and pan them left and right, I hear the same depth that I do from my original guitar. So the details, I'm sure they're hard at work all the time because they keep coming up with updates for the machine, even 10 years later, which is amazing. I think it works really well. When I get a perfect profile of a sound I really like and I can preserve it forever and dig it out anytime in the future if I want, that makes me happy. And it's really at that point now.
Fear me.